Hi, welcome to Carswell's Customs. Today we're going to continue with the Built for Boost series of engine building. Today we're going to go ahead and do some head porting and modeling and reshaping. So lots of different ways to do this, and this is how I do it. So let's go. Alright, cool. So let's talk about some tools first. I've got a variety of different carbide bits here. I like the finer cut versions. Sometimes they clog up with aluminum. So what I'll do is dip these things in like transmission fluid first, and then start the shaping grinding process. And the aluminum chunks don't stick to the teeth as much. Yeah, I've seen people use these, and I think it's good when you're removing little bits of aluminum. But these things grab too much for me and the way I do things. So I don't know. I have a lot better luck with the large rounded one and then the smaller ones. Once we get most of the metal removed, I like to have 60 or 40 grit rolls. If you do research and do some reading on keeping fuel suspended in the intake ports, abrasive port is more desirable than like a mirror finish. I think not too many people would disagree with that, as long as you're running air and fuel through the intake port. So I like 40 and 60 grit rolls. These are 3/8, and those are good for getting around the valve stem bosses. And then these are, I believe these are 1/2 inch size. But again, good all around. But you'll need both of them to get into the tight places. This is a Harbor Freight drill or die grinder, and it spins for me too fast. And especially with these bigger bits, if you start to get the longer shafts, these things will start like wobbling and vibrating and going all over the place. So I got this from off Amazon. It's a variable speed plug-in doodad, and so I'll plug this into the wall outlet over there, and then I'll plug the die grinder into this, and then I can set how fast I want or how much juice pretty much goes to this, and then I can modify my speed, because this is just a on-off switch. There's no variable speed on that. I have an extra long hose again from Amazon, and I hook that to my shop vac, and then I'll run a coolant radiator hose, so I can force this into the intake holes, and then I can suck all the aluminum or metal, cast iron that I'm grinding out, and it all goes into the garbage versus all over my shop and in my teeth and hair. Earplugs, of course, and then face protection, excellent. And these are the tool, and obviously some gloves, because the vibration from that grinder kind of gets fatiguing. Little guy here. So when I install this hose into my shop vac, I've drilled a hole in it as well, and you'll see that when we actually get into this. But I have a tiny light that I turn on, and then I'll actually insert it through that piece like so. So when I put the vacuum into the port, I can have light going into that port, and it shows through the other side. So that's very helpful as well. Another good tool that I like to use is Silicone RTV. I mix up one of these once. Usually I do it before I start porting and then after, and that way I can get a good idea of what I've done and what needs to be done. This is a stock LS1 or cathedral port, and you can see the valve seat and how there's a ridge line from the port itself to the valve seat. And so this is a cathedral port that I ported myself, and so you can see that while there's a little bit of, whoops, let's look at the one I'm talking about. So you can see as there's a little bit of like flashing here, there's not a step or any type of transition error as we see in the stock. You can see it's blended in. So, and on top you can look at the valve guide boss, how thick that is versus the valve guide boss on this one. And then I went on, which would be the long side I went ahead and pushed the wall out just a little bit over here, and then raised the roof as well, just a little bit on there. Depending on what you're looking for performance out of your engine, the how you shape these can be a large factor. And you can see the stock versus the modified. It's kind of hard to see because they are dirty. I take the molds right out of the ports before I touch them, before they get clean. So anyway, we've got these ports here. We've got the LSX, or L76 rectangular port mold, and as well the LSX port molds. I also took an LT, the new direct injection mold on that as well. And so as you're getting into this, and I had nobody to teach me how to do this, so I went ahead and just read a ton of books on head porting, and we've got the LSX, the LSX is here, and then the rectangular port is here, and you can see the generous size of what would be called the long side on the transition here as it moves down. So in my mind, I'm not looking to make the ports any bigger, but when I do try to port heads, I try to focus just a little bit on this and have the long side here pushed out just a hair, you know what I mean, and then raise the roof just a little bit. But my number one concern is the throat. And you can see right from the factory, the LSX ports, the throat is super close to the valve seat itself. So I mean, there is some, you could improve these heads a little bit with probably a cartridge roll and bring that port out to the valve seat. Here's the L76. I actually ported this one, and you can see how the port itself transitions into the valve seat. So there's no restriction, or the throat is opened to that seat. Okay, great. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and make a port mold after I go ahead and get the port done on the set of heads over there. And I'll use the LSX idea as kind of a guide, and we'll take the stock cathedral port, put it next to the LSX, and you can see there's a big difference, and I'm not going to try to make this stock port as big as this, but just the way that it transitions and flows, I just want to make sure I'm mimicking the smooth bends and then the again, the throat work to make sure the port blends into that valve seat as efficiently as possible. So GM engineers at this point, even though I don't want to admit it, probably know more about head flow than I do, so I'm going to go ahead and use this as my kind of guiding light. So anyway, sounds like my cat wants to get in on the show too. So right, okay, Penelope, we got it. So good point. All right, I'll catch you guys in a minute. Hey everybody, one quick thing. When I say like long side and short side, I'm probably not using the exact terminology, so I want to clarify that real quick before I get too many posts saying I'm using it incorrectly. So when I say this side, this is the cylinder wall side. So if we were to flip this thing upside down on an LS engine, right, and we were looking at the cylinder head and the cylinder, like the piston would be here, right? And so the cylinder wall side is this side. So if we rotate this over for the mold, this cylinder wall side is the side that I like to put a bit more effort into. So just so we can be 100% clear and I can use the correct terminology. Cylinder wall side, not the cylinder wall side. Okay? All right, cool. So let's get on to it. Alright, so you can see where the 60 grit is just kind of starting to score the surface. I like to get an idea of what the port looks like, because sometimes even after a cleaning from the machine shop, there's carbon or weird stuff left in there. So, as you can get an idea, got like a casting line in here, and then the throat is the transition here from the port itself to the valve seat. Okay, so I got to be real careful. These valve seats have had a 3-angle valve job on them already, and so I don't want to bang into this and ruin the finish that's already on there. But kind of risky, but you know, oh well, we'll figure it out. Here's the boss for the valve guides, right, and valve stem boss, and we can clean this up, and you'll see that there's a step in here too that runs from the port into like the valve boss. Let's see if I can get a light on that. Yeah, you can see it a lot better. Don't want to get rid of that step. That step is important. It's in the LSX heads as well. So again, GM put that there for a reason. And other books I've read say that that increases torque due to the increase in atomization. So as the fuel, if the fuel does turn into droplets and attaches itself to the cylinder wall, it'll hit this ridge and shear or drip, and then the circular airflow picks it back up and reatomizes it. So that's the theory or whatever, but the only thing that really matters is the dyno, and then the only real dyno is the racetrack. So but that has been proven to increase torque. So awesome. All right, so we'll just keep on doing this and see what we can get to. All right, so let's take a look here. After a little bit of work, you can see in here, I like put the flashlight in here, and we'll talk through it a little bit. So this bowl here, if you look at the valve seat, right, and if you look, you can look, like take a straight line from the valve seat back to the roof, you can see that there's no material that's impeding, or if you look at my finger, like the port wall isn't kicked out, right? Now the port wall is receded back, so when the air comes in from this side over here, sure, right, comes down this wall, now it can fill this volume, right, that is the same diameter as the valve seat. So this port wall has been pushed back to the diameter of the valve seat, right? So there's no step from the wall to the seat, and the volume inside that port, while increased a little bit, in other words, I pushed the wall backwards, it is in line with the valve seat. Okay? And so as you look in here, I didn't go too far back, but I did blend this wall into the port floor here. See if I can get something smaller to point with. So then the wall here has been blended up to the port wall. I did take a sandpaper roll and run around the would be the short side radius of the port itself. Okay, and I did follow it back. I did a little bit of work on the valve guide, just kind of sanded her down a bit, but then here's the cylinder wall side roof, and I did put some work into that, not a ton, but I did put work into it, and the cylinder wall side, I did push that out just a hair. Now, not a ton, and not enough to make any real measurable like volume changes, but just the transition. So if you take your finger and you pretend that your airflow coming out, my lights just went out. That's interesting. So if you pretend your airflow and you're coming down this port, you would want to transition smoothly into this area, so when the valve opens, you can go straight into the cylinder, right? So when you're porting, just think about the air. You know, think about going to a like a sporting event, like an arena, Like I went to the Joe Louis Arena and watched the Wings play a while back, and when all the people were stuffed into that long hallway, you can't really go anywhere other than where the masses are going. And so if you were to walk straight into the wall, right, like air does, air crashes into the wall and it doesn't know to turn left or right. So since air is running into this wall over here, make it a little bit bigger. So therefore more air molecules can actually pass on this side, because that's the wall it's running into. So the example of the Joe Louis Arena is if we were all just walking straight out and couldn't see in front of us, we'd crash into the wall too if the wall or the tunnel took a left turn. Well, if somebody were to make that left turn wider, you could fit more people through that same turn in the same amount of time if that wall was pushed out wider. And that's what we've done here. We've pushed this wall out wider just a little bit and smoothed the transition from the port wall into the bowl itself so it would match the valve seat diameter. Just cleaned up the other side a little bit. Again, just the transition that comes from the port wall into the valve seat, just making everything as smooth as possible. These heads are really great to begin with, the LS heads, cathedrals, and the rectangular ports, but you know, porting always produces good results if you take your time, look at some good pictures, get some good books. And I'll post the books and the tools that I've used in the description. So, well, at this point, I'm going to give her one last look, and then we'll move on to making a port mold and see if I've done as good as the time before. So, catch you in a minute. Alright, so you can see inside here. Let's see if I can get the camera a little bit better in there. But you can see that bump is gone, and you can see where the threads show through on those rocker arm studs. Alright, so when we do install our rocker arm studs, we'll put some thread sealant on there to make sure there's no vacuum leaks or any kind of weird business happening with that. But just took the small 40 grit paper roll and roughed it in, and then I went with the 60 grit half-inch size paper roll. And again, I'm not reshaping the port, I'm just clearing out the bumps and spots, still keeping a nice rough finish, and so the whatever fuel droplets get in there won't stick to the wall, and hopefully as the cool air blows by it will pick up the fuel droplets and reatomize itself if that does occur. So I'll take one more look from the other side, and if there's any touch-ups needed, great. If not, we'll move right on to making those silicone molds. Alright, so I did go back in, touch up a couple things, and I took a little bit more of the valve stem guide boss down a little bit and just kind of smoothed everything in. I did find out where I stuck my finger in there and felt back to where the rocker stud boss was. It was kind of, there was still a little bit of a bump left in there, so I knocked that out and then just blended everything together as best I could without enlarging the port too much. So yeah, there we go. I think it's ready for molding, so let's get to that. Alright, so let's get to some mold making. This is Silicone RTV part A and B from Tap Plastics. I'll put a link up to where I get the stuff. And there's enough here to do like 3 ports, but I'm only going to do 1 port today, and this has been in my garage for almost a year, so I just want to use it and get it out of here, if you know what I'm saying. So this is a good opportunity to get this stuff out of here and do something cool. Alright, so when you mix the stuff up, don't chop it up because you'll add air into the mixture. You'll want to stir it around and continue to stir as you mix things in. And then again, try not to add bubbles to it because that just ruins the integrity of this stuff. You can mix this all in one like I just did, or You can weigh it out. If you've got a scale, you can use like half of it. Obviously half and half of the product. Okay, so they recommend transferring this fluid into a container, and you have a hole in the bottom of it. So when the fluid comes out, it actually gets rid of its own air bubbles. So I'm going to go ahead and punch a hole in the bottom of this. Okay, so this port over here is the one we're going to be pouring the fluid in. So I've got a valve here. On the other side, what I'll do is put a zip tie around that valve so it doesn't come out, because there is weight to this silicone RTV. Okay. What we'll do is, valves in, I'll use this high performance piece of tooling. Set the cylinder head up so I can pour the mixture straight into this intake port. Okay. And what I'll do is, hard to see this, so let's bring it back just a bit. Alright, so I'm just going to stir this as it goes in. And then it should fall out of that little hole into the intake port. You can see it going in, I'm sure. Just going to make sure the intake valve is closed. Again, double check, make sure my zip tie is tight. I'll move this over. You can see how it's drawn in, the RTV, and filling right up. Okay, that'll do that. And we'll bring this up to level. So we get the port, the entire port filled in. So this stuff is awesome. Like after you get through with it, after I've made like port molds like this here, I have taken like a Mustang emblem and made a mold of a Mustang emblem and gave it to my daughter, so she had like this silicone Mustang emblem she'd run around the house with and play with. So anyways, this stuff's really cool and fun. Try not to get it in the threads like I did, but yeah, so here we'll just wait. I'll leave it overnight and it should seal up right, and we should have a really nice intake port mold tomorrow morning. Alright, so here's the day after and what the silicone looks like after it dries. And if we look down here, It looks like my zip tie wasn't tight enough, so some of the silicone leaked out past the valve. So what I did was I put two zip ties on there and tightened them down as hard as I could. Also, I had to tape off this piece, the rocker arm stud location, because when I ported the cylinder wall and it had that rocker arm stud boss inside the intake runner, that created a little hole, so some of the fluid or the silicone came out that way. So just grabbed some tape and taped it off with a little bit of paper towel. It'll be a pain to clean out, but oh well. So this is some of the stuff my daughter and I made with the extra silicone. You can see there's a ton of it left over in the 1 pound size. So, you know, we've got little bears that we're making molds of, and we just cut out a piece and I tried to make like an emblem mold. Bottom line is, this is pretty fun, so if you can, involve your kids, because there'll be extra silicone everywhere anyway, so may as well have some fun with it. Okay, so now the extraction process to get the silicone out of the cylinder head is, this is obviously the intake port, like the intake manifold side, and this is the, you know, valve side or cylinder side. The mold has to come out this valve. You know, you pull the valve out and then you put pressure on the back side of this mold and then pull through here. So have a helper, because it's very important, and use a full can of silicone spray, and I'll show you how we do that in just a second. So let me get this thing set up and we'll go from there. Alright, so after you work this back and forth and then push with your thumb and mess with this, the whole mold will break loose. It won't come out very easy, but you can see how there is movement in here. So then just load it with this silicone. I mean, just load it up. Silicone? Yeah, silicone spray. Yep. Alright, so you can see underneath too. Let me get some light under there. You can take the your screwdriver and kind of get behind it, and you see how it's almost coming out. So what'll happen is, if you've got an extra person to help, if you do this pull a little bit and not rock too hard on the 3-angle valve job and have somebody push from the top, so come on up to the top here, as they're pushing from the top, and you've got your head chucked onto your workbench real good, you can maneuver it and push it right out. So we'll go ahead and set that up, and we'll be right back and show you how to do that. Okay, so I got my helper here, and what she's going to do is push from the top, and we'll pull on the bottom here and see if we can get this thing out. So go ahead, and you'll be surprised how much that actually helps. Your screwdriver, if you've got a good strong thin one, will probably penetrate some of the silicone, but as long as you keep it in one hole, okay, go ahead and stop pushing. You can go ahead and get that that mold out. We'll go ahead and show it from here. Okay, let me grab the camera real quick. And as you can see, it's coming right out, and I kind of stabbed it in the back, but that's the price of doing business. All right, so we got the mold out, and so we can take a look at our work. And so I'm not sure if you can see the texture here, but there is a like an impression of the 60 and 40 grit paper rolls that we use to clean up the the port. So if we look at the port, this would be the cylinder wall side, right? And so we'll flip this around so the cylinder wall side comes over here. You can see that there is work that I did on the cylinder wall side. I've raised the roof a little bit here. And as that roof is raised and brought around, it's also that cylinder side wall just a little bit has been increased in its width. Let's take a look at probably one of the most important pieces is the transition from the port into the valve seat. The 3-angle valve job would be down here. And so you can see that there's no notches or bumps or weird choke points from over here would be the port itself into the this 3-angle valve job. So that's a win. That's pretty good. Maybe on the back side here I could do a little bit better cleaning up. Like that would be the short side radius back here. And looking at it, it looks like I've got just a little bit of a high point in the port ceiling on the cylinder wall side of the mold. So these molds are excellent to gauge your work, and I would recommend doing one of the do one port and do the best you can, and then take a mold of it and you can see where you can even do a better job. This piece here is the valve, let's see, that would be the rocker arm boss, stud boss, and it just kind of hung on and it's up in there, but I'll have to clean it out. But yeah, and you can see even there, I don't know if you can get the shadow, but the rocker arm guide boss, even after I tried to push it back, there is still a little indentation, meaning there is some port wall that's pushed into the port itself. So I could even take this the sanding roll and bring this out a little bit wider as well, just to match the width of the natural port size. So there's that. I'd call that successful. The only hole that we have in this thing, or the damage to the port itself, or to the mold itself, was when I put the screwdriver in at the bottom. And so, yeah, it's damaged, but it's not bad. I mean, you can definitely get an idea of how your short side radius flows. These LS cylinder heads are amazing, and they follow a very close relationship to the LSX and the racing heads. So yeah, hard to improve on them, but there is some stuff you can do, especially if you want to grab extra horsepower. So all right, well, we'll go ahead and move on from here. Hey, thanks for watching Carswell's Customs. I hope all this information helped out in your head porting mission. Hope you can build some more horsepower with the information I shared today. All the tools that I used are in the description, so I'll appreciate if you take that link, go ahead and do some shopping through there. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.